Just want to kind of go through some of those main points. There was a lot to unpack with what Trump said, but a couple main points here. He said there were very strong talks. He said we are very willing to make a deal, and we have a real possibility of making a deal. But he said, but I'm not guaranteeing anything. He said that discussions took place Sunday, went into Sunday evening, and Iran, very much wants to make a deal. And he said, if the 5-day period you're just talking about goes well, we'll end up settling this, or, quote, we'll continue bombing our little hearts out. He says the Iranians have agreed to 15 points. He said numbers 1, 2, and 3, they cannot have nuclear weapons anymore, and they have agreed to that. And then he said if we have a deal with them, when he was asked the question, well, how are you going to get the enriched uranium? There's an estimated 400 kilograms, excuse me, of 60% enriched uranium at the Isfahan nuclear site in Iran. When he was asked about that, he said, if we have a deal with them, we'll go down and we'll take it ourselves. It's still a little unclear who specifically we're talking to. He said it wasn't the supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who we haven't heard from or haven't seen. We don't know if it's alive. He said, but, you know, we're dealing with a man who I believe is mostly respected and is a leader. They do have some leaders left, despite both the U.S. and Israel taking out basically their top command structure. And he said, we think we have some people that are representative of that country. So, look, this is possibly very good news, but on the ground here in Israel, my sources within the IDF, Israeli officials, are cautiously optimistic. I said apprehensive earlier, maybe that's too strong a word. They're cautiously optimistic because over the weekend, once again, Israel got hit with a barrage of ballistic missiles, including 2 that hit 2 southern Israeli cities, Arad and Dimona. Nearly 200 people were wounded, 11 seriously. Just today, there was a cluster bomb attack in Ashkelon, just to the south of Tel Aviv, where I did a lot of reporting during the war in Gaza after the attacks on October 7th. And in Tel Aviv over the weekend, on Sunday, there was a cluster bomb attack and about 15 people were wounded. So, you know, my sources within the IDF have told me, Sean and Edie, over the last basically week and a half, that they don't expect this war to wrap up anytime soon, at least for Israel. And at this point, Israelis are being told, don't let your guard down, even though it's been quiet the last couple hours. As we've seen, that could change really quick, guys. Back to you.
Senior correspondent John Huddy live in Tel Aviv with the latest there. John, thank you. Panelists are here joining us now. Fred Fleitz, former Trump National Security Council Chief of Staff and Executive Secretary, and a former CIA analyst. Don Bramer is a former Bush administration official, former Naval Intelligence officer. Great to have both expertise on. Fred, let me start with you. The president speaking just before boarding Air Force One this morning, points 1, 2, and 3 of this so-called deal that is being worked by Kushner and Witkoff with Iran is to not have nuclear weapons, which we knew that was the big point of this. But how do you enforce something like that?
It's great to be here. I first want to point out the strong endorsement of Newsmax's objective reporting by the president, at least 2 references to that, which I thought was great. This was an important statement by President Trump because he put out this Truth Social earlier today that he was going to suspend attacks against energy infrastructure for 5 days. And the pundits immediately said that's not true. The Iranian government said it's not true. He came back today, said it is true. There are negotiations. There's 15 points the Iranians have agreed to. There have been, I believe, probably indirect talks with Witkoff and Kushner talking to the Omanis. The Iranian government, I don't think, is intact. I think it's fragmented. We're dealing with people who seem to be running the country. I don't think a deal is certain. But I think the president reassured people today that there is something going on and there may be a way to end combat operations this week.
Don, Saudi Arabia had transferred shipping its oil from the Strait of Hormuz and was moving it over to using the Red Sea. Iran, and we know that they have a lot of proxy groups such as the Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. They're using the Houthis now to target ships over in the Red Sea. So they're trying to expand this. What, from a Navy intelligence perspective, what can we do to shut down communication? Because somehow they're communicating this information to their proxies.
Well, good morning. You know, they've built these lines of communications over several years. And, you know, when you're transferring the amount of money that Iran has transferred to its proxies in the region, they've established these, like, pipelines, whether it's through courier, not always necessarily electronic means. So that's going to be a huge alliance to reaching out to our intelligence assets that are on the ground and looking for all these different sources of trafficking.
Don Bramer, Fred Fleitz, out of time there, obviously listening to the president live. Thank you very much. We do appreciate that.
Good to be here.
Thank you.